Hi guys, Scott here from TEPIS Paranormal and welcome back to another video. So today what I thought I'd do is I'd talk you through my paranormal bucket list. This list consists of 10 locations from around the world that are haunted that I want to visit and investigate myself. Now up until recently the ancient Ram Inn would have been on this list, however now that I've actually been there and investigated it, which you can check out in Doody Rhino's video on the location, it's been moved off of the list. I will also say this list isn't in any particular order, these are just 10 locations that I want to investigate. So yeah, let's jump into the first location. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. This famous poem is related to the Lizzie Borden house and the Lizzie Borden murders. Lizzie Borden was born in 1860 and was an American woman accused of murdering both her stepmother and her father in 1892. It's thought that Borden first killed her stepmother before later killing her father, who was asleep on the couch. Several days after the incident, it's believed that Borden destroyed evidence, burning a dress in the stove. Though acquitted of the crime due to circumstantial evidence, Borden was ostracised by the community in which she lived up until her death in 1927. The Lizzie Borden house is said to be a highly active paranormal location, with guests at the house experiencing limbs and ears being pulled on. It's also said that several apparitions are seen around the house, one of which is a woman wearing a white nightgown, which is rumoured to be the spirit of Lizzie's stepmother, Abby Borden. It's also reported that doors move on their own and that toys move as if they're being played with by an unseen force, and that an owner that stayed in the house heard voices, heard footsteps, and also experienced a strange amount of touching. Due to the unsolved nature of the crime, and the general spirits and paranormal activity associated with this house, it's somewhere that I'd love to visit and investigate, and therefore earns its place in my paranormal bucket list. Next up on the list we have the Queen Mary. A retired British ocean liner, the Queen Mary is considered one of the most haunted boats on the planet. Originally setting sail in 1936, before finally being retired in 1967, the Queen Mary was eventually sailed and is now permanently moored at Long Beach, California, where it remains to this day. Now the ship serves as a museum with a restaurant and a hotel situated on board, as well as wedding venues and event venues. However, when night hits and the sun goes down is when the spirits of the Queen Mary are said to come out to play. Among the numerous ghosts said to haunt the ship include a white lady. Guests and workers alike have spotted a lady in white roaming the ship wearing some sort of evening gown, of which there is photographic evidence that I'll put on screen now. Little Jackie. Jacqueline Torin was 5 or 6 when she drowned in the ship's second-class pool, and her spirit can still be heard to this day screaming for help, splashing and screaming for her parents. John Henry was a maintenance worker who died in the engine room of the ship. He's said to still haunt this area and appears today as a shadow figure. Visitors and investigators on the ship have claimed to communicate with him. Grumpy is another spirit said to haunt the ship. Though his true name is unknown, he gets this nickname due to his habit of growling at people. The ship's also home to several other spirits. However, given its paranormal nature, its history, and generally being the most haunted ship in the world, it's a location that I'd love to visit and therefore earns its place on my bucket list. A location that I didn't know much about up until relatively recently, the Château de Brissac in the Pays de la Loire region of France, is another entry on my bucket list. The chateau is currently owned by the family of the current Duke of Brissac. The most famous ghost of the chateau is that of La Dame Vert, or the Green Lady. Said to be the spirit of Charlotte, the illegitimate daughter of Charles VII and his mistress. It's rumoured that Charlotte was caught cheating on her husband with a lover, and in a fit of rage they were both murdered. This act has supposedly left Charlotte's spirit haunting the building to this day, and her spirit has been reported as being seen in the tower room of the chapel wearing a green dress, hence the name the Green Lady. One of the most disturbing features of this apparition is the fact that unlike conventional apparitions, she appears to not have any eyes or nose, much like that of a skeleton, instead having holes where they should be. Her moans are also said to be heard throughout the chateau early in the mornings. So this is a location that I learnt quite a bit about in the last few years, specifically while working on the Paranormal Advent calendar that I did a few years ago. If you want to know more about the history of this location, there's a video over there that I'll put in the description down below. However, the chateau has beautiful architecture, a great history, and a lot of paranormal activity within, earning it its place on my bucket list. Next up we have the Winchester Mystery House. Located in San Jose, California, the Winchester Mystery House was built by Sarah Winchester. It began construction in 1884, after the death of Sarah's husband and infant child. Sarah visited a medium in Boston who told her to move west and build a house for the spirits of those killed by the Winchester rifles. It's rumoured that Sarah believed her family to be haunted by ghosts, and that by building this house she could appease them in some way. Sarah built the Winchester Mystery House, named such due to many oddities contained within, such as stairs and doors leading to nowhere, windows overlooking other rooms, and staircases of strange sizes. It's said that the house was built in a way to confuse spirits and keep them contained within. However, the spirits are also said to have had a direct input on the building of the house, as Sarah is said to have conducted numerous seances within the property, leading to the property having its own designated seance room. Numerous paranormal investigations have taken place within the property, with one of the most infamous ghosts of the location being that of Clyde. Clyde is said to have a moustache, wear white overalls, and have a Victorian hat. He's often seen pushing a wheelbarrow in the basement of the property, or trying to repair the broken fireplace in the ballroom. As well as seeing the apparition of Clyde, footsteps and clothing being tugged are also common occurrences within the Winchester Mystery House. Now, the Winchester Mystery House is a location that I've been very interested in for quite a while now. Since I first saw it on Ghost Adventures many years ago, it's become quite a high-ranking part of my paranormal bucket list, and is a location that I very much intend to visit one day. Next up, we have another fairly high-ranking entry on this list, in the Villisca Axe Murder House. Somewhat similar to the Lizzie Borden house is Iowa's Villisca Axe Murder House. In 1912, 6 members of the Moore family were murdered within the house, as well as 2 guests who were staying with them for the night. All 8 of the victims, including 6 children, were bludgeoned to death via an axe. The case, however, remained unsolved as the suspects were never found guilty of committing the crimes. The victims were the Moore family, consisting of Josiah, aged 43, Sarah, aged 39, Herman, aged 11, Mary, aged 10, Arthur, aged 7, and Paul, aged 5, as well as 2 friends of the family, Ina May and Lena Gertrude Stillinger, ages 8 and 12 respectively, who'd been invited to stay the night. When a neighbour noticed the family never rose for their morning chores, she got concerned and went over and rang the doorbell to the property, but had no response. She then called Josiah's brother, who came over with a key, entered the property and found the bodies. The murder weapon, an axe, was found at the scene in the guest room. Doctors determined that the murders must have taken place between midnight and 5 a.m, and 2 cigarettes found in the attic indicate that the killers were hiding in the property waiting for the family to go to sleep. The house is rumoured to be heavily haunted, with some who visit even claiming to have communicated with the killer directly. The house is also said to contain disembodied giggles and voices, screams, unexplained movement, and in some cases a strange mist that floats from room to room before disappearing. Some visitors have even reported strange behaviour and potential possessions taking place within. The truly horrific crimes committed at this property make it a location that I'd love to visit. The pure negative energy from these crimes and heinous acts seem to fuel the paranormal activity within, with both the victims and the killer supposedly haunting the location. If you want to know more about the history of this property, you can check out Doody Rhino's video on it, where he goes into more detail on the crimes, including the heinous acts committed that I'm not talking about in this video because they're too dark for this. Next up on my bucket list is Eastern State Penitentiary. A functioning prison for almost 150 years, Philadelphia's Eastern State is considered the world's first true penitentiary. Known for its role in the development of the separate system for incarceration, where prisoners were kept completely separate from each other in hopes that this solitude would help them to rehabilitate themselves, Eastern State was later used as a model for over 300 prisons worldwide. Through its active years, the prison had a number of inmates, including Al Capone, as well as a dog named Pep the cat murdering dog, who was incarcerated for killing a governor's wife's cat and then got locked in the prison, even getting an inmate number and a mugshot taken. It's said that the prison's home to a number of different hauntings within, with cell block 12 being well known for voices and cackling, cell block 6 being known for its shadow figure sightings, and cell block 4 being known for the sudden appearance of ghostly faces. A very active location in the paranormal world, covered quite heavily in a lot of different shows. It's a location that I'd love to visit. The sheer size of this prison and the sheer history and just the general atmosphere makes this a must-visit location for me, and henceforth it earns its place on the bucket list. Next up we have the other prison on this list, the famous Alcatraz. A small island located in the San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz, also known as the Rock, is one of the most famous prisons in the world. Open for 30 years between 1934 and 1963, this maximum security prison now serves as a museum and tourist destination in the San Francisco area. Once regarded as America's strongest prison and considered almost escape-proof, at its peak Alcatraz could hold a capacity of 312 inmates. In 1962, 3 inmates successfully escaped the prison. However, it's unlikely that these inmates made it back to mainland, as they had to swim 2 kilometers in the dark through the icy depths of the San Francisco Bay water, struggling against strong currents. It's also worth noting that this prison had various famed inmates, including the previously mentioned Al Capone. The most haunted area of the prison seems to be cell block D, also known as Solitary. One inmate who was locked in solitary reportedly begged and screamed for guards to let him out, claiming there was someone with glowing eyes in the cell with him. The next morning, this inmate was found dead, with hand marks around his neck that were deemed to have not been self-inflicted. Could this have been a guard fed up with his screaming and pleading that killed the man? Nobody ever came forward and confessed to this, but it is possible. This story takes another weird turn, where the next day during the inmate count, they counted this man and saw his physical apparition, before the apparition disappeared when guards investigated further. It's also said that phantom cannon shots, gunshots and screams can be heard around the island. Native Americans, known as Ohlone, were the earliest known inhabitants of the island, and in Miwok mythology, the island is said to be home to a number of evil spirits. Being known as one of the most haunted prisons in the world, as well as being a very popular tourist destination, Alcatraz intrigues me and stands out to me. It's a location that I want to visit for the history, for the architecture, for the paranormal, and because it was featured in my favourite film, The Rock. But it's a location that's on my bucket list due to its hauntings, due to its haunted nature, and because of the potential evil spirits that dwell on this island in the San Francisco Bay, earning its place on the bucket list. Moving on once more, we have Waverly Hills Sanatorium, a former hospital located in Louisville, Kentucky. Waverly Hills was set up as a tuberculosis hospital in the early 1900s due to its perfect location along the wetlands of the Ohio River. Due to the nature of tuberculosis and the lack of scientific understanding of the time, patients and staff working with them were isolated from society, kept away in their own self-contained community, which Waverly Hills became, with its own water treatment plant, post office, as well as an ability to produce its own food, including both organic and livestock. Through the years, the building's been developed and changed, with new wings and wards being added and built. The building as it stands today is a large Gothic structure that could hold over 400 patients. The hospital has a reputation for its hauntings, with a variety of reports, such as a little girl being seen on the 3rd floor, a boy seen playing with a leather ball, and a woman who's bleeding from the wrists, begging for help. There are also stories of a man in a white coat spotted near the kitchen, at which point the aroma of fresh food fills the air. And in addition, the most popular ghost sighting at this location is in room 502, where people have seen shapes moved, heard voices, and in some instances, visitors have even jumped out of the windows to their death. According to stories, a nurse hung herself in room 502 after discovering that she was pregnant and unmarried, something that at the time was considered shameful. Considered one of the most actively haunted paranormal locations in America and one of the most haunted hospitals in the world, Waverly Hills Sanatorium is a location that I'd love to visit. I've seen it numerous times in different TV shows through the years, and it really stands out to me as one of those locations that you have to go to. Its sheer size, architecture, and evidence captured really intrigue me, and I would love to go there and investigate it myself overnight. Therefore, it earns its place on the bucket list. Moving on again, we have the Island of the Dolls. Now, I first saw this in a Ghost Adventures episode quite a few years ago, and it's stuck with me since. The Island of the Dolls is literally that. It's an island in Mexico that is covered from head to toe in dolls of varying size, shapes and conditions. The story is that the island's owner, Don Julian Santana Barrera, prior to his death, started the collection of dolls after finding a dead girl floating in the water near the island. It's said that the ghost of this girl was heard by Don Julian, saying, "I want my doll," and that he started the collection of dolls on the island to try and appease this spirit. This hasn't stopped since, as since his passing, visitors bring their own dolls, and the island is just covered from head to toe in supposedly haunted dolls. Due to its active paranormal status, the island's been visited by a large number of paranormal investigation teams and groups, such as Ghost Adventures and BuzzFeed Unsolved. The island really stands out to me as I have quite a vested interest in haunted dolls and spirit attachment to dolls, so it intrigues me and it's a location I'd love to visit. Therefore it earns its place on this bucket list. Moving on finally, we have the last entry on this list, Bobby Mackey's Music World. Probably my highest ranking location on this list. Bobby Mackey's Music World is a location I first witnessed in the debut episode of Ghost Adventures back in 2008. Located in Wilder, Kentucky, Bobby Mackey's Music World is a nightclub and honky-tonk owned by country musician Bobby Mackey. It served as a slaughterhouse for a period in the 1800s, and the building was purchased by Mackey in 1978, at which point he converted it into a nightclub and bar. Today, it's considered one of America's most haunted locations, with a number of murders taking place at the location through the years. A woman named Pearl Bryan was allegedly beheaded in the nearby area in some sort of satanic sacrifice, and her head was dumped down at the old blood well in the basement that's left over from its days as a slaughterhouse. The blood well is a well that leads directly into the nearby Licking River. It's said that since this act, the well is now known as a gateway to hell within Bobby Mackey's. It's also said that the two men responsible for this beheading, Scott Jackson and Alonzo Walling, claimed that they would return after their deaths and haunt the area forever. Former caretaker of the building, Carl Lawson, once lived in an apartment on the upper floor of the building, and it's said that while living here, Carl got possessed by a demonic entity and had to be exorcised on multiple occasions. A patron of the bar reported having a metal bin thrown at him in one of the bathrooms of the location, and upon investigating further was confronted by the apparition of a man with a handlebar mustache who repeatedly shouted the words "Die game" to him over and over again. The building's most famous spirit is that of Johanna. Johanna is a woman that Bobby Mackey has written a country music song about that you can listen to, and it's very good. It's said that Joanna's lover Robert Randall was murdered by her father, and a heartbroken Joanna later took her own life by consuming poison at the property. Joanna's spirit is said to still haunt this building to this day. In a strange coincidence, Bobby Mackey was actually born Randy Mackey, but a couple of days after his birth, his mother changed his name to Robert Randall Mackey. So could Bobby Mackey be some kind of reincarnation of the original Robert Randall? Could this be why the location's now so active, with Joanna mistaking Bobby for her former lover? As I said before, it was the Ghost Adventures episode that really drew me into this location, and since watching that episode all those years ago, it's been really stuck in my mind and has stood out to me as probably the top location on my bucket list. A location that I desperately want to visit and would love to investigate and want to try and capture, experience, and just generally deal with the paranormal within. It's a location that I very much intend to visit in the future. But with Bobby Mackey's music world, that brings us to the end of my bucket list. Let me know what you think of my choices in the comments down below. Are there any locations you think I've missed that potentially could be in my bucket list in the future? Do you have your own paranormal bucket list? Are there any locations that you really want to visit? If there are, let me know down below. But for now, I've been Scott from TEPIS Paranormal. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.